Filming in low light can give you those stunning cinematic night shots, but only if you do it properly. If not, your footage will likely turn into a noisy, all-grain disaster, but don't worry. Just follow the 5 tips I've prepared for you today, and after watching this video, you'll be able to shoot better videos in low light without pricey studio lights and using any camera. What's up guys, my name is Raman, you're watching Movavi Vlog, your favorite go-to channel for making great videos. And when it comes to shooting videos at night or in any other low light conditions, there are tips you definitely should know if you want to make your videos greater. So in the next 10 minutes of this video, I'll be talking about how you can shoot at night and get little to no noise or unwanted grain in your footage using even a cheap camera. And naturally, no studio lights or other expensive gear needed. But before I get to the point, let me kindly ask you to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell and the like button just right now, okay? In case you aren't satisfied with my tips after watching this video, you can have your like back or even dislike if you want. That's totally fine. Just tell me more in the comments about what you think I should work harder on. Alright, so you grabbed your camera and went shooting at night. How do you get an image at night without getting a lot of noise? In order to avoid the noise, you need to understand where it comes from. In most cases, the noise in your footage probably comes from increasing your ISO too much. Beginners, please don't be scared, let me guide you through this. Well, ISO is a parameter you can find in, I guess, every modern camera. It's basically how sensitive your camera's sensor is to light. The more you bump up your ISO, the more sensitive it is to light. In other words, it takes less light to make an image. So when you're thinking about exposure, there are 3 key parameters that affect it: ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. Basically, you can use any of them to bring more light to your footage and achieve the desired exposure. You can, definitely, but you should know that all 3 have their own side effects. Let's say you have a dark image. It totally makes sense to elevate the ISO. In modern cameras, it could go up to crazy values like 10,000, 25,000, and the brands even use this to promote and sell new cameras. Like, hey, our new camera gives you up to 25,000 ISO, so you're able to shoot in super low light. Technically, it's true, but when you simply bump up the ISO to insane values, you'll be able to shoot in the dark, yet at the same time, you'll get really noisy footage. So there are actually ways you can use your camera so you don't get noisy. And the first tip I'd like to give: don't film above your base ISO. Every camera has that base ISO, and when you start going above that base, you're introducing more noise into an image. You may be wondering what ISO range it's better to stick in. Well, it depends on your camera, your lens, and the filming environment. But as basic guidance, let me tell you that for a lot of cameras, 800 ISO is where you want to stop when shooting in low light. For filming this low light video, I used 500 ISO. This is Sony A7 III footage you're watching right now. And this camera is famous for its great sensor, allowing you to shoot with higher ISO without noise. But even this kind of expensive camera will give me that ugly noise image if I just set the shutter speed and aperture I normally use to shoot in the daylight and decide to bring more light into the sensor only at the cost of crazy ISO values, like right now. As you can see right now, my image has gotten too noisy, super noisy, because the ISO is now insane 8000. You might be familiar with the thing called the exposure triangle. If not, I highly recommend you to watch a great tutorial you can find on the Movavi Vlog channel. It's all about using the manual mode on your camera and understanding these 3 settings. I'll leave a link in the description. So as you can guess already, high ISO is what creates that noise when you film in low light. So we're gonna keep the ISO under 800 and compensate for the lack of light by working with the the other two parameters of the exposure triangle, the shutter speed and aperture. But just before I move to the next tips I've prepared, let me quickly introduce a special offer Movavi has for the Movavi Vlog subscribers. If you're looking for apps to edit both photos and videos, I'd like to recommend you check out a bundle that includes Movavi Video Suite, an ultimate software package for making videos, and Picverse, the brand new photo editor with smart tools that will help you enhance your photos with just a few clicks. These apps contain all the basic tools a filmmaker/photographer might need. They're super intuitive, which of course makes the creative process faster and more enjoyable. You can start using them right away without wasting your time on instructions. A very cool thing about this bundle is once you have installed both programs, Picverse becomes a part of Video Suite's main menu, so you won't have to rush between the two apps. Everything will be in one place. Also, you can always add even more themed effects from the Movavi Effects store to your Video Suite's built-in collection. Remember I was talking about a special offer? Well, our promo code VLOG15 will give you a 15% discount on this bundle. You can download the free trials of both apps to check out their features on your own, or click on the link below to proceed right to our special page with the discount. Going back to business. Now, how do you use the aperture and shutter speed settings to get greater noiseless shots at night? Tip number 2. When it comes to shutter speed, don't go lower than 1/60th if it's low light shooting. It's when you have 30 FPS. If you're shooting at 24 frames per second, you should keep 1/48th shutter speed as your limit. As soon as you bump up above that, you're not going to have the motion blur that looks cinematic. But more importantly, the faster shutter speed you use, the darker image you're gonna get. Personally, I like shooting at 25 FPS with a shutter speed of 1/100th, at normal light conditions of course, but since this video is being filmed at low light, as you can see, I set it to 1/50th, which already allows me to bring more light into the sensor without having to increase the ISO and without extra noise. At the same time, I don't recommend lowering the shutter speed too much, even though it may seem to be a good idea. Reducing the shutter speed to around 1/30th leads to more motion blur, which turns out to be almost extreme motion blur when you film moving objects or move your camera fast at night. So unless such strong motion blur is the creative goal you're trying to achieve, don't make the shutter speed too slow in low light so footage stays cinematic, but don't get too fast as well in order to avoid underexposed shots. Okay, let's finally move to the third tip, which is about the third element of the exposure triangle, the aperture. Wide aperture is a game changer when it comes to filming in low light, simply because wide aperture means more light for your camera's sensor without affecting the shutter speed and without any noise or grain. And when you shoot at night, you always have a great advantage if there is a prime lens in your backpack, because primes almost always allow you to use a wider aperture than most zoom lenses can afford. For instance, normally I use a kit zoom 28-70mm lens with the aperture value of 4. You can see how the image looks in the recent video of mine on this channel. But since today it's low light conditions, I'm not using the daylight or my studio lights, I changed the normal lens to a prime 35mm Samyang lens, which gave me the chance to set the aperture to f2.5 and still expose the shots properly. Also, low aperture values like f1.4, f2.2, actually even f3.5 will give you that shallow depth of field and cinematic blurry background that looks even more cinematic in night shots. At the same time, prime lenses and wide aperture can bring some limitations you have to consider before you went shooting at night. With primes, you cannot change the focal length instantly. You have to think in advance about how wide your shot will be and how close you should get to the object you're filming. And with a wide aperture, you have to be more careful with the focus. Otherwise, the objects in your shots will easily fall out of focus, and you don't want that, right? Those are my 3 essential tips for shooting better videos at night regarding the settings you can use on your camera. But even if you have a decent camera and you go for the settings I suggest, you still won't be able to shoot in complete darkness, right? So here goes tip number 4. When you're shooting at night, you want to find areas that have some light, and when you find those sources of low light, only then you'll be able to get an exposure using the settings I'm talking about. After all, it's all about filming at low light, not no light, right? So you gotta look around and use the sources of low light that can make your footage more cinematic. Neon lights, garlands, car headlights, street lights, fire, matches, smartphone screens, computer monitors, and so on. That's what usually do. Only when you play with the light and different sources of low light, when you play with how the light is hitting your objects, you will be able to get some cool footage. Finally, here comes tip number 5, and it's very short. It's a tip that I hope will help you avoid mistakes that are too hard to fix. Many beginner filmmakers hope that they can fix underexposed low light shots later in post. But when you actually try to introduce more exposure to your image in the post-production stage, you simply bring up the noise level. So when you export it in your video editor, it will turn out super noisy. So my tip is, don't rely on post-production under low light circumstances. Don't think, oh, I'll fix those dark shots later in post. Shoot for the exact light and color you want to have as your final result. And that's it for today's episode of Movavi Vlog. I'm sure my tips will help you get better shots at night. If not, please leave me a comment below about issues you may face when you film at low light. I and the Movavi Vlog team are always here to help. My name is Raman, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you very soon.